No way this is actually happening again. Of course, it's fall camp. It's just a little over a month away. I think it's safe right now to look at the roster and the team and ask ourselves, did Arturas Karnisovas improve the team and back up the comments he made in his exit interviews? Or was it just the same copy and paste speech that we got pretty much every season for the last 3 years? Hello and welcome to Bulls Digest. My name is Isaias Jackson Jr. and thank you guys so much for tuning in. We got to get into all the news and notes in Arturas Karnisovas and of course Marc Everlsey as well, and getting into their comments in the exit interviews and seeing did they do what they said they were going to do in improving this Chicago Bulls team. However, 67.5% of you guys are not subscribed. 32.5% of you guys are. We appreciate you guys on both sides. And look, I did my part in supporting the Chicago Bulls. I showed my love and support by showing up to Bulls Fest. Of course, Of course, had the time of our lives. I went with my sister. Ran into Shaq as well. Shaq, of course, shows up on the program. Of course, I am a huge fan of Shaq. The great guy, of course, no shock in that at all. But I showed my love and support by showing up to Bulls Fest. And you can show your love and support by hitting that subscribe button, liking and sharing. And thank you guys so much again for tuning into Bulls Digest. Bulls front office still stargazing as NBA fall camps draw closer. Of course, as I mentioned, just a little over a month away. And of course, it just seems like we're dealing with, as it says right here in the text, the same old, same old. The consistency of the Bulls front office must be applauded. And of course, you could take that, with a little bit of sarcasm because you're seeing the consistency in the Bulls being consistent and not doing absolutely anything. And just going in the past couple years with the Chicago Bulls, ever since you've seen the moves, with the DeMar DeRozan trade, the DeMar DeRozan grab, and then of course you've seen the Chicago Bulls work to get Lonzo Ball. You thought the Chicago Bulls were going to be on an up and up, and then of course you can see with the Josh Giddey move as well. After the Chicago Bulls do one valuable move, one thing that they do on their list. Our hands are clean. We pretty much are finished. We made our move. You seen the Josh Giddey trade. Josh Giddey traded for Alex Caruso. Yep, our hands are clean. We pretty much did all we could do this season. What's next? What's next? You guys happy? Are you guys happy now? This season, we got rid of Lonzo Ball. Isaac Okoro is now a part of this Chicago Bulls team. Josh Giddey, what? You want what? I'm sorry. We're busy right now. We just did what we needed to do right now. That was pretty much that was the only time where they showed their sense of urgency was when they traded Lonzo Ball and of course bringing in Isaac Okoro, at least for that 3 spot for the small forward position. Hopefully make some moves there. But you're not really seeing a whole lot of success, and you're not seeing a whole lot of movement with the Chicago Bulls. Hell, even in the contract negotiations, as we talked about with Josh Giddey, and even as we were talking about Kobe White, if they're treating Josh Giddey like this, imagine how they're going to treat Kobe White when they're trying to re-sign him throughout the season. And of course, when he doesn't re-sign with the team, of course, me just trying to look into me being Nostradamus, looking into the future, when he doesn't re-sign for the team over the offseason, and he goes and tests his value off in the open market and free agency next season in the 2026 offseason, then we're going to be dealing with even more problems. We're going to be running into the same situation, and then we could potentially be out of Kobe White. So just going on, let's continue on with the article. The article made by Joe Cowley as well, had to give him some credit too. Executive Vice President of Basketball Operations, Arturas Karnisovas, and General Manager Marc Everlsey began the offseason with no real plan about how to land a superstar who would make the Bulls appear to be a serious organization. Then spent the last 4 months carrying out no plan to perfection. Of course, solid pieces on a deep roster, check. We can always go through that. Solid pieces on a deep roster. You have that automatically. When you're looking at the guys like Kobe White, Josh Giddey, of course, just the starting lineup in itself. Of course, Montes Buzelis. You drafted the rookie Noah Sengay, of course, who is looking to be some sort of a bright spot, if not this year, at least for the future for the Chicago Bulls. And the guys that we're not really speaking highly about, but we know can tout up some very valuable numbers and can contribute to the team for the Chicago Bulls, like a Ayo Dosunmu, of course, like I guess we can't throw in a Patrick Williams. You paid him that much. We still got to see what improvement we're going to get from Patrick Williams this year, or if we're going to see what his value is going to be like in the trade market as well, and see what value we can get for Patrick Williams. We're still waiting to see what we're going to get for Nikola Vucevic, but we just went through Nikola Vucevic's comments as well. He's looking to start the season as a Chicago Bull. Now, is he going to finish as a Chicago Bull? Of course, that's up in the air. But right now, we can now see the Chicago Bulls having some solid pieces on the team. Of course, that dude, in quotation marks, who can hold up an NBA Finals MVP trophy, nowhere in sight. I'm sorry, even though I just listed off 4 out of the 5 stars in the Chicago Bulls organization with the Josh Giddey, Kobe White, Montes Buzelis, and of course you got Noah Singay, Nikola Vucevic. That's listed 5, but nowhere in sight. None of them are going to lift up an NBA Finals MVP trophy this upcoming season. Not happening. And I could pray about it. We could pray. We could talk about it. We could try to believe it, but it's not happening. It's not happening at all. And so, with the solid pieces that they have, with the deep roster that they have, and of course you can talk about the Trey Jones, who they just re-signed. Of course, Zach Collins was on an expiring contract as well. We can talk about the guys who have still played a part. Jalen Smith, who's on this team, and great guys, valuable off the bench, and some we mentioned with the Kobe Whites and Josh Giddeys, valuable to the team. Of course, the superstar to the team. However, they're not Giannis. So of course, they're not Giannis, to a team, of course, as I mentioned. And they're not the Steph Curry, they're not the LeBron, they're not the Luka Doncic, so with the Chicago Bulls, of course, we're seeing great work from Kobe White, of course, and especially the string of games that he had at the tail end of the season. However, he's not necessarily carrying the Chicago Bulls himself. Of course, it's a team effort with the Chicago Bulls, and it's very team-oriented, as we've seen. It's not necessarily a one-man wrecking crew, as we've seen from a lot of teams coming through. So that's why when the players start to filter into Chicago in the next month for scrimmages at the Advocate Center, it will have a small ripple effect rather than a large splash. A mediocre team doing mediocre things to the surprise of no one. And he goes on to quote Arturas, well, there's a plan. Karnisovas tried to insist in his last official sit down with the local media, He then explained that the plan as not putting limitations on the ceilings of the roster that he has. So just explaining that plan as not putting limitations on the ceiling on the of the roster that he has, going on to quote, I think we're always going to look at how to improve this roster by adding a player or a high caliber player, Karnisovas said. At the same time, I would not put any limitations on this roster or on the way Kobe White has been playing or on the way Josh Giddey has been playing. I think those players have a chance to play on a very high level. We're consistently going to be looking for ways to improve from year to year. And yeah, that's 100% right. And we seen it with Kobe White and Josh Giddey through and through. When Josh Giddey went down with injury, and we saw Kobe White just go through those just monstrous games. And then, of course, we got to give a whole lot of love to Trey Jones, too, because Trey Jones held his own, giving us 15 points, giving us the 10 points with 7 assists as well. He played his part at the point guard position. But, Kobe White, of course, came through and stepped up. And then, of course, when you see Kobe White and Josh Giddey together, it's just, you're just seeing beautiful work being put on display, especially with Kobe White at the shooting guard position, and you're leaving Josh Giddey there to facilitate and find the open man and find the reads there for him, and then of course getting the likes of his teammates open as well with his passes. And so, one helps the other, in more ways than one. Of course, I'm not really speaking any crazy knowledge here to you guys. You're seeing it on display. And of course, it's just not this year. Sure, Montes Buzelis is expected to pop, but it still will be only his sophomore season. Yes, Kobe can take another step towards all-star consideration, but he's still on the outside of those halls looking in. As I mentioned, Kobe White, we can always talk about him being an all-star. We can talk about how fun it is, to see Kobe White on the floor. I can tell you guys, because I love hyping up my favorite team. I love hyping up my favorite players as well. So I can tell you going on all day and all night that Kobe White is going to be a superstar in this league. Am I wrong? It's yet to be seen so far. But Coby White is showing you that he can do great things on the floor, and he can be a star in this league, and he's a star for the Chicago Bulls. He is a star on the Chicago Bulls team because that's how a lot of the fans, or at least a good amount of the fans, see him. I'm not going to say a lot and put you guys in a huge basket. A good amount of the fans see Coby White, at least see him as a star in Chicago. Once you get outside of Chicago, that's when you start getting in. That's when you start. But outside of that, when you start looking at Josh Giddey, when you start seeing Josh Giddey on the flip side, totally different conversation, because Josh Giddey was being talked about highly when he was in OKC, and just talked about the high ceiling that he had, the great work that he had, and if he keeps going, pretty much the sky is the limit for Josh Giddey. And of course, you could put Coby White in that same boat, but Josh Giddey, of course, him being 22 and him being, of course, showing that he can be a triple-double machine, showing that he can facilitate, score, and rebound. It's just a monster of a player in itself. And I'm sorry that Coby White just hasn't been hearing that as of late, or in terms of from the get-go, as we heard from Josh Giddey, but it's still not. We're still not hearing MVP caliber. We're still not hearing taking the Bulls to a championship. We're not hearing. There's a ceiling to where we're seeing Coby White and Josh Giddey right now, and where they can take the Chicago Bulls. And even though it sucks, it's just the truth. Of course, then there's Giddey. I spoke too soon. I went on my tangent, and of course, I pretty much dropped the gun here. Then there's Giddey. Let's talk about Josh Giddey now. Josh Giddey, who is still in a contract extension standoff with the team. The Bulls don't know whether they'll be getting a player who was unusable late in the game last November or December, or the one who was a triple-double threat in every game for the last 6 weeks of last season. Again, hope isn't a plan, but it's the only plan this front office has going forward right now. The Bulls did trade Lonzo Ball to the Cavaliers for Isaac Okoro, who could move into the starting lineup and quickly could cover up some of the gaping holes on defense. Even at his best, however, Okoro is still only a piece. Damn! Look at that gut punch. It's just like, and that's true. That's the truth right there. Isaac Okoro, he's not a guy that you're going to plug into your starting lineup and says, okay, this man is a game changer. This man is going to come through, and he's going to be the reason why. He's going to be that extra edge, that we have on offense. Because the minute you find somebody a whole lot better, Isaac Okoro is going to be gone. Because the minute somebody improves, especially if somebody like a Patrick Williams starts to show himself as the season goes on, you can definitely see Isaac Okoro lose that starting spot. But of course, as I mentioned before, as I usually do here, wishful thinking. And so, just moving on here, the front office loves to tout the idea of all the financial freedom coming its way next summer, with possible 6 contracts, those Nikola Vucevic, Zach Collins, Kevin Huerter, Coby White, Ayo Dosunmu, and of course Javon Carter coming off the books. But the days of quick fixes through free agency died years ago. Yeah, that's not happening anymore. And we're seeing it right now, the quick fixes through free agency. And that died a long time, especially when we were starting to make the big three, when they were starting to make super teams from OKC, and Phoenix Suns, just recently, a couple years ago. And we could go through and bounce off every other Golden State Warriors, even though they had some success with their super team. But you're not gonna pretty much help. There's not gonna be a quick fix for your team in free agency. Of course, teams have gotten a whole lot better. And of course, Chicago Bulls, I don't think there's enough pieces there that there's going to be one key guy that's going to come through and help. There's going to be a quick fix that's going to come through and help the team in a big way. I think the Chicago Bulls are just too deep, into mediocrity, to come out of that. So, of course, good organizations hold on to their own players to figure out a way through signing trades to capitalize on the market. The Bulls front office far too often has figured out a way to throw good money at mediocre players and then hand those players a player option to further dictate the terms as well. The best path forward for the Bulls is the one that they refuse to take. Of course, the summer has shown the 2026 class has a chance to be even better than the 2025 one, at least more top heavy. Of course, you have the Darren Petersons of the world, the Boozer brothers, of course, Carlos Boozer playing for the Chicago Bulls himself as well. And so, yes, it is stacked. I don't want to talk about the draft. No, that's the last thing I want to talk about right now. I want to talk about being successful throughout the season. The last thing I want to talk about is draft capital and just what the draft and draft prospects. No, not right now. let's wait until the middle of the season and see where the Chicago Bulls at before we, dive deep into that, because I feel like that right there would just give me just a huge headache in itself. But just continuing to go on to Marc Everlsey's comments. I think for us, we need to remain diligent and pragmatic onto how we build things. This is what he said in June. We don't want to skip steps. Sometimes when you do skip steps, expectations build and you make mistakes. I don't think we want to do that. And I like this. Don't worry. No expectations has been built here, and that's 100% fact. So what do you think? Do you think that the Chicago Bulls did their part? Do you think that Marc Everlsey and, of course, Arturas Karnisovas, do you think they did their part in improving this Chicago Bulls team? Or do you just still feel that pit in your stomach that you just been lied to again? You just been sold a bill of goods once again. That, of course, they're going to tell you that all they want to do is improve the team and just do what's right for the team. And, of course, it's just a couple of decisions that's just head scratchers. And of course, Josh Giddey still not being paid. Of course, you're seeing Nikola Vucevic saying that he's staying with the team. Patrick Williams, of course, the talks around him have died down. And of course, we still don't know what's going to go on with Kobe White going on to next season. But do you think that the Chicago Bulls, Arturas Karnisovas, of course, Marc Everlsey, do you think that they're doing their part to improve their team, or do you think that this has just been a huge lie once again? And it's going to continue to be that exact same way. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.